Congressman Collins. Congressman, thanks for joining the show. We woke up this morning with one report saying the White House was considering doing them on a simultaneous track. Yesterday, Newt Gingrich said he thought it would be smart to do infrastructure first. Where do you stand on this? Because it feels like if you were doing it from a political point of view, that's the lowest hanging fruit, infrastructure.
Well, I think it is, and I think the interesting part about it is look, last week we did suffer a setback. I think there's still going to be more story left to write there. But I think as the Trump administration looks forward, they're looking at their agenda. What is so good about this president is he keeps the vision ahead of us. And so I think when we start looking at infrastructure, we begin to look at tax reform. I believe that you look at both. Now, they both come with inherent issues. You have infrastructure pay-fors, you have infrastructure on how it's going to be used, how can we engage the communities and how we engage the states, but also with tax reform, which touches everyone, in something that not only the president has talked about, but the Republicans in Congress especially, and Democrats to an extent, have talked about the poor structure of our tax package for a while.
Yeah, and with all respect, infrastructure's got like a 90% approval rating. There's no one watching this show that hasn't hit a pothole recently or heard a horror story. So everybody feels like, hey, there are plenty of projects. We know bureaucracy is an issue, getting these things done, and making sure that money sent to states isn't spent elsewhere. So, again, and it's also probably the easiest place to get that bipartisan, getting a bipartisan agreement going. So we know the vision is there. That's why President Trump is in the White House. Now it's about execution.
Well, I think execution, but always remember, vision is out there. Now you put the fundamentals underneath that vision. An infrastructure plan that simply looks at long-term and pays, and not in a sense in which it is using and spending money that we don't have. We can never lose sight, and especially from my opinion and many others, we cannot lose sight that we still have a debt, that we still have a debt that is growing, and we got to make sure that what we're spending our infrastructure dollars on have the pay-fors and have the priority spending that we need to do it on. I agree with you.
Then let me jump in, because how do you quantify that? Let's not forget, Eisenhower's massive highway bill was under the guise of military spending. And that's why they were able to push it through, and no one was talking about how do you pay for it. Do you argue better roads? Can you quantify that better roads means getting product and services to people quicker, and therefore, shouldn't be held hostage by a CBO score?
Well, I don't think you're being hostage by CBO score. You're talking about what many Republicans and even Democrats have talked about, that you cannot just simply spend. Listen, comparing the Eisenhower interstate highway system to where we are today is an interesting comparison of putting legislation together. It's not a fair comparison to say where we were financially and fiscally in the 1950s as compared to where we are today. It's an interesting analogy, more on the lines of how do you put a bill together. We can make an argument for a good road. I can make a great argument for our port in Savannah. There's many other infrastructure projects, not just the regular bridge and roads, but also the deals with our rural communities, our broadband infrastructure, our communication infrastructure. These are things that have to be a part of that, but also it has to be done in a way in which you can't just give people, say it's all ice cream, and then tell them later, oh, by the way, there was spinach down there that you had to eat that you didn't realize. So
despite what Mark Meadows said with respect to, the not having to be deficit neutral, if you will, You're suggesting, it sounds like you're saying that you would be against any plan that cannot be paid for on paper and some sort of static scoring, and that means that you put yourself in a difficult position to support this.
No, that's not what I'm saying, Charlie. What I'm saying is we also have to look at how you do it. There are many ways that you can go except just simply going to the Treasury and writing a check for this. There's ways that we can partner with states. There's ways that we can partner with other industries. There's ways that we can do this that maximize the leverage of the federal dollar. I think what Mr. Meadows, and he's entitled to his opinion on how we do this, I'm not sure you have to pay for every dollar of it in a deficit neutral setting. What I am saying is, though, is before we simply go out and say, and the president has done a great job, and I agree with him, working on these projects, we have to remember the debacles that have come past when we simply just give away money, which the Obama administration did, and got us in a position now to where we are having to fight a debt and deficit problem, which we all agree is a big problem.
Representative Collins, thank you very, very much. Really enjoyed the